So today our mission is to get percent recoveries for the tryptamine and the cinnamic acid that we're drying in the desiccator, and to run some IR and some melting points. So the first thing we want to do is take the tryptamine that was from the ethanol out, and this was the cinnamic acid that we took from the 4:1 aqueous ethanol. And this one, I think, yeah, that's an old crystallized cinnamic acid, so we don't need that one. So the cinnamic acid had already been, we'd already taken the boiling stone and the filter paper out, so all we got to do is weigh that one. Tryptamine still has the piece of filter paper in there, so the first thing we're going to need to do with the tryptamine is to remove that. Okay, put this beaker back. Those anymore. So there's not very much tryptamine, or at least doesn't look like there's very much tryptamine. That should be enough for analysis. And now that it's dry, it'll be easy to scrape the remaining residue off the filter paper. You can discard that. Purified percent recovery for tryptamine is going to be terrible. So we can go weigh these two. Once the balance calibrates, there was a power outage, of course, so it turned off. Because there's always a power outage. So the cinnamic acid beaker, now that it's dry in the desiccator, has a mass of 8.245 grams. That's 8.245 grams for the cinnamic acid beaker. And the tryptamine beaker, 8.182 grams. 8.182 grams for the tryptamine beaker. So we're going to take those two samples, and we're also going to take the vanillin, along with these three spatulas, one for each of the compounds. And I'm going to label those so I don't mix those spatulas up. And we'll use one of those for each. So we have tryptamine, and we have cinnamic acid, and we have vanillin. You, of course, have lot numbers on those. So this is the one I used for the tryptamine already. And for the cinnamic acid, we got this one. And then for the vanillin, and I'm also going to label some watch glasses. That's what I'm going to use for the melting point. So we'll have one for tryptamine, one for T, and one for cinnamic acid. And one of these for vanillin. Use those later. Let's get the IRs first. So I need these three spatulas and the three samples. Take those over to the IR station. I already put 3 KBR pellet making kits over there. So we have kit 2, kit 4, and kit 5. Kit 5, we'll put vanillin over there. Put the tryptamine over here in kit 2 and the cinnamic acid in kit 4. Here's my vanillin. E-cinnamic acid. So let's do tryptamine first. So we've got our mortar and pestle. And we've got our little collar. So we're putting the collar on the small piece first. Make sure that's clean. Looks like it's pretty clean. A little rough. And then we just want just a tiny little bit of this tryptamine. We've got barely enough to run melting points and IRs. So just a little bit, just a couple milligrams. And we'll grind that up. It's already a pretty fine powder to begin with. Nice and white, so that's good, right? We can tip that upside down, it's not coming out. We can now add our KBR. I'm going to use the stuff that it says, do not use this KBR, because that probably is pretty dry. Yep, it's nice and free flowing. That's what we want out of KBR. And we're going to add a scoop of that. Hoping this stuff is dry. And then we're grinding that up. This KBR is a little coarser than sometimes it is, so I'm going to do a little bit more grinding than I usually do. And then of course it's also supposed to take the tryptamine back off the mortar and pestle. And it should be freely flowing, so I can bounce that back and forth. Seems pretty good. And we just want to use our scoop end to scoop some of that in there, cover the base. I put about a third of the sample in there, roughly. And tap that around to get the residue off there. Make sure it's pretty evenly distributed around the bottom. We don't get any cracks and holes. And we need to adjust this. There's still no mark there. I'm going to get a pen so I can actually mark that once I have a good setting. I think that's probably about right. Insert that in there. Alright, that's a little too loose. That seems right. Clamp that up. So now we know that about 15 on the dial is about right. Should be good enough. Take that top one out first. And we got a nice, relatively transparent pellet. A little bit darker on the one side, but that pellet's going to work pretty well. So there's tryptamine done. I probably won't need the rest of that. So now we're going to do the same for the cinnamic acid. Ooh, that's not a very nice looking thing. That's all wet. So Somebody put that away wet. So we won't be using kit 4 today. We'll be dealing with that later. And let's see what kit 5 is like. It looks like it got put away wet at some point, so it's all rusty. But it's dry at the moment, so we're good with kit 5. Cinnamic acid is much more kind of mica-like, right? Kind of plates. I don't know how clearly you can see that it's definitely fluffy, which means that we're going to put what looks like a little bit more compound in there than we did for the tryptamine, just because it's so light. It'll be about the same mass. And we're going to grind that up. It'll look about the same once I've ground it. And you can see that it's pretty nicely distributed. And smeared on there like it should be. KBR. And grind that out. And I want it to be nice and finely ground and well mixed so we get a uniform pellet and it fuses nicely. Today's a good day to be running IR because it's pretty dry. It's not very humid today, which means that the KBR is not sucking too much moisture out of the air. Yesterday would have been a terrible day because it was raining. Alright, relatively free flowing. And scoop about 1/3 of that mix in there. And tap it down to get it to cover the bottom piece pretty evenly. And this should still be set where I had it before. Well, I'm letting that fuse. I'll go grab another kit. Hopefully kit 3 is actually dry. Get that out. Yeah, we've got another pellet. That's pretty good. Not quite as transparent as the tryptamine, but it will work. And we can do the vanillin. And this kit looks like it was put away dry. That's in good shape. We know the vanillin is not quite pure from the cone, but hopefully pure enough to get a decent spectrum. This one's a slightly stickier powder than some of the others, so it doesn't really even take very much grinding to get that to stick on the walls. Our last scoop of KBR. Put that back. Same process as before. Grind the KBR up nice and fine and get the compound kind of sandpapered off the bottom. Again, putting about 1/3 of that in there. Tapping it down to distribute it. Got a little bit more in there apparently. Took a little bit more effort. Oh, no, it got skewed when I put it away, so it's a little tighter. So the tryptamine pellet's really nice. It's almost transparent on the one side. Cinnamic acid's not quite as good, but good enough. And the vanillin is quite nice. Alright, so we got our 3 pellets.